What's up, mi gente? This is your host Andres, and I welcome you to Were You Listening? An exploration of blackness in the songs we love. Today, we'll be listening to El Negro Bembón, performed by Maelo Rivera. Were You Listening is a series of the Mixedtape podcast which aims to center the contribution of black people and culture across Latin America, the Caribbean, and their diaspora through dance and music. If you were looking to practice your bilingual skills, mira, si tú quieres practicar, there is also a Spanish version of this episode. Así que ve y lo escuchas en español también. Follow us on Instagram at themixedtapepodcast and click the link tree in our bio to find all of our episodes across all platforms including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. I shared a little about Maelo back in track 4 of the Were You Listening series, Mi Negrita Me Espera. In that episode, we learned that Maelo, also known as El Sonero Mayor, was a beloved Afro-Puerto Rican singer who is recognized for addressing issues of race and racism in black people's everyday life through the songs he chose to perform. As such, Cesar Miguel Rondon, writer of the Book of Salsa, describes Maelo's songs as music in which, I quote, his listeners can hear stories that reflect their own everyday life experiences. End quote. With Maelo cited as, quote, one of the first singers to raise social and racial issues. End quote. El Negro Bembón is an example of the way in which Maelo delivers messages that resonate with people's experiences, especially black people's experiences. El Negro Bembón was composed by Félix Manuel Rodríguez Capó, aka Bobby Capó, and it was a hit for Cortijo y su combo, the band Maelo was part of, led by his longtime friend Rafael Cortijo in the mid-1950s. Discussing why they included El Negro Bembón in their catalog of music, Rafael Cortijo is cited saying, I quote, "When we started with the combo, it was evident that we were a very black group for the public. It was necessary to look for a number that would break the ice, that we ourselves laugh at our blackness." End quote. This justification, arguably a manifestation of internalized racism, resonates in the US with the practice of portraying blackness in a stereotypical, hyperbolic, and comedic way as a form of entertainment. A topic discussed in Ibram Kendi's book Stamped from the Beginning. However, Maelo's portrayal is both comedic and tragically violent. The song distracts you while you stand on the edge of oppressing anti-blackness, an edge that the song itself also portrays. When our former host Melissa chose El Negro Bembón for the Were You Listening series, she did it not only because she had very much enjoyed dancing to this very catchy song, but also because while haphazardly listening to the lyrics, she found a story of violent discrimination and prejudice against a black man simply because he is black. Her reflection while dancing to this song is very telling. I quote, "How odd it is to dance to a song written with sadness and injustice." End quote. Let's listen. Bemberen Bembeye, pobre Negrito Bembón. Poor Negrito Bembón. The song begins with a typical guaguancó fashion. Maelo begins the song with his target Bemberen Bembeye. Targets are made by the singer to establish the melodic line of the song. Maelo then sings, Pobre Negrito Bembón, poor little black Bembón man. What does he mean? The adjective Bembón comes from the root word Bemba, to which we know from our Bemba Colorá episode, remember? It means big or full lips, a feature commonly identified with blackness. By adding the suffix on, Maelo turns the Bemba word into the descriptive Bembón, which emphasizes the size of the black man's lips as a notable phenotype. By adding the word pobre, Maelo communicates us a feeling of pity because of something that may have happened to the main character. Mataron al negro Bembón, mataron al negro Bembón. Hoy se llora noche y día porque al negrito Bembón todo el mundo lo quería. The black Bembón man was killed. The black Bembón man was killed. People are crying night and day because everyone loved the negrito Bembón. Let's talk more about the descriptive word Bembón. Bárbara Abadía, in her 2009 article, Rethinking Blackness, Racialization in Popular Music, explains that the adjective Bembón, I quote, apart from its pejorative and degrading charge, is seen as a misfortune or a sign of bad luck, end quote. We hear in the song that people are mourning because everyone loved this man. However, Abadía does not let the community off the hook. She argues that, I quote, greater compassion and consideration for someone who everyone loved would have prevented death, end quote. Instead, even in his death, the main character is named with the pejorative El Negro Bembón.
Y llegó la policía y arrestaron al matón, uno de los policías que también era Bembón.
Y llegó la policía y arrestaron al matón. Y uno de los policías, que también era Bembón, le tocó la mala suerte de hacer la investigación. The police arrived and arrested the killer. And one of the police officers, who was also Bembón, had the misfortune to lead the investigation. Maelo uses the Bembón descriptor also for one of the police officers who arrives at the site of the murder. By context, we can safely assume the police officer is also black. But why is it that the police officer is unlucky to have to do the investigation? Well, because his black identity supersedes his social status as a police officer and exposes him to a world of anti-blackness.
¿Saben la pregunta que le hizo al matón? ¿Por qué lo mató? Diga usted la razón. ¿Y sabe la respuesta que le dio el matón? Yo lo maté por ser tan bembón. El guardia escondió la bemba y le dijo.
¿Y saben la pregunta que le hizo al matón? ¿Por qué lo mató? Diga usted la razón. ¿Y saben la respuesta que le dio el matón? Yo lo maté por ser tan bembón. El guardia escondió la bemba y le dijo. And do you know the question the police officer asked the killer? Why did you kill him? State your motive. And do you know the answer the killer gave him? I killed him for being so bembón. The officer hit his big lips and said to him. Maelo is brutally direct about the nature of this crime. The killer blatantly says he killed the black man for being so bembón. In a New York Times opinion piece, Dr. Kihana Ross, a professor of African American Studies at Northwestern University, wrote that what black people face cannot just be described as racism, but also as anti-blackness. Dr. Ross writes, I quote, anti-blackness describes the inability to recognize black humanity. It captures the reality that the kind of violence that saturates black life is not based on any specific thing a black person did. The violence we experience isn't tied to any particular transgression. It's gratuitous and unrelenting. Here, the police officer recognizes that he is at risk of experiencing this hate crime and hides his big lips so they wouldn't kill him too. He's vulnerable, even though he is in the assumed position of power, a huge dynamic of white supremacy. It makes me think of how black US soldiers should have felt during the Jim Crow era. Eso no es razón, hay Dios para matar al bembón. Huye que huye Juantón, mira que por allá viene Panchón. Yo te juro por Dios que viene tumbando Bemba. Ya se la tumbó al negrito Bembón. Bembón para matar al bembón. Huye que huye Juantón, sacude. That's not a reason, oh God, to kill the bembón. Run away, Juantón. Look, over there, Panchón is coming. I swear to God, he comes knocking down Bembas. He already knocked down the Bemba of the Negrito Bembón. Bembón, to kill the Bembón. Run away, Juantón. Shake it. The simplicity of this self-evident curse and the rather calm tone with which it is delivered are appalling. This is the way in which this very black group for the public, as Cortijo described his own band, attempts to both break the ice and burn it too. Musically, the chorus allows Maelo the inspiration to do what he is best known for, soneo. In other words, improvisation. Given the context, the intended figurative translation of tumbando Bemba, which we have translated as knocking down Bembas, is that the killer is murdering black people. Maelo is strongly advising Juantón to run away. We can assume Juantón is also black. He might even be the police officer. And because of what we saw happen to El Negro Bembón earlier in the story, we know that Juantón is also at great risk. Maelo tells us that Panchón, the assumed name of the killer, is going around killing black people. This is extremely unsettling, especially as Maelo then sings sacude, shake it, which can both be interpreted as a message to the black man Juantón to get moving, or as an odd invitation to dance as the trumpet and the trombone solo starts. Esconde la bemba, que ahí viene el matón. Hide your bemba, the killer is coming over there. This message to Juantón in the chorus is one that resonates with black people living in the US, including those with an elevated social status like the police officer in the song, at risk of facing hate crimes motivated by anti-blackness. Writer Ta-Nehisi Coates states in his book Between the World and Me that his body is in constant jeopardy. He is in a war for the possession of his body, and that would be the war of his whole life, marked by hypervigilance and an awareness of the risk associated with being black. Berembembeye, pobre Negrito Bembón. Berembembeye, poor Negrito Bembón. In a 2017 blog post, Leticia Peguero, sociologist and vice president of programs at the Nathan Cummings Foundation, says, I quote, "These days, when I listen to El Negro Bembón, it feels as if the song was written for this very moment. It is the story of targeting and hypervisibility. When a certain narrative is at play, we are completely visible and therefore vulnerable in ways that do not reflect our humanity." End quote. This vulnerability she speaks of has elevated the risk of hate crimes like the one we hear about in this song. Though this song was composed in the 1950s, the Associated Press had reported in November of 2019 that hate crimes in the US had risen to the highest level in more than a decade. As of 2023, things had not improved. According to data from the FBI, more than half of all victims of hate crimes motivated by race, ethnicity, or ancestry are victims of anti-black hate. Regrettably, this song reminds us that to this day, this kind of treatment has always been the reality for black people in the history of the US. To finish our episode, today we also invited Nicole Ahima from Nashville Salsa Dancing to reflect on this song. Here's what she shared with us.
What can I say about this song? One, it's very catchy, as we all know. That often happens with salsa music. It's so jovial, it's so uplifting in the sound, especially if you don't speak the language until you really look deeper into what is being said. So what really struck me about this song in particular is for the diaspora, how much of our history is not hidden, but like, for lack of a better word, quote unquote, hidden in languages that we don't even understand, because our own languages were taken from us. And so much history, so much pain, so many of people's stories are in songs, in literature, in art, in words that we all don't understand, and yet we somehow share the same stories. In the Spanish language, there are a lot of things that are typically offensive in English that are cute little nicknames in Spanish, like gordito, or even like morenito, or maybe I'm making that up, but I think I've heard that before. But to know that there is some kind of derogatory term for a Afro-descendant person with fuller lips, something about learning that has knocked the wind out of me. But I try to be an optimist, and so on the other side of that, what I choose to look at is the fact that I even get to dance to this song at all, or any salsa song. And I choose to view what I hope, even in light of all the recent events, is that we can all celebrate each other's culture, and that nobody is calling me that currently. And yeah, this was a deep one. This one was pretty intense.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for sharing your thoughts with our audience. I really appreciate it. I also want to thank Dr. Melissa Bilotas for volunteering her valuable time as our sound editor and for creating the original version of this episode. She actually created the original version of this episode. I'm also very grateful with Carlos Javier Felix, who donated his time to translate the episode into Spanish. Gracias, Carlos. And to our incredible audience, thank you so much for being here with me today. I am your host, Andres Encapié, and if you weren't listening, now you are.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. To hear today's song or other songs featured on the Were You Listening series, check out the Were You Listening playlist. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at mixedtape.podcast and YouTube, which are easily accessed through our website, themixedtapepodcast.com. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for our posts. This episode was sponsored by Orange County Arts Commission. Thanks for listening. This is Mixedtape.